All right, we're back, folks, with another episode. And let me just tell you right now, Christy Honeycutt is our guest today. And what we talked about was all about the competitive edge and how you as a leader can be human first, but also call in the best talent, call in the best people. Let me tell you about Christy for a second. She's an accomplished talent operations executive with over 2 decades of experience transforming HR and talent acquisition through centralization and technology. She has so much insight in today's episode. She really specializes in building and delivering innovative strategies to support organizations in scaling via AI and hyper automation. What you'll hear in today's episode with Christy and I going back and forth is her passion for making the world a better place, her passion for the future of work and how we meet people where they are in today's age and where the workforce is headed. And I just love this episode because she gives so much insight to how she's seen leaders have a helping hand and help others around them, and how you, as a CEO, people leader, HR professional, can do the exact same thing and support the people around you. Christy's episode is going to be incredible today. So make sure you just really dive into it. You take notes, maybe you write something down, let the story stick with you, hit your soul, and help you impact the people around you. So let's get into Christy's episode. Hello, welcome back to the FeelSwell Cultures podcast. I'm so excited that you're here listening today, whether you're on your drive to work, you're on a walk, you're just enjoying some time doing nothing, because we can do that. I have a very special guest today here. We've got Christy Honeycutt. We have a special relationship. Christy and I just spent time together at the HR Retail Conference. You're going to love hearing from Christy today. I'm telling you, it's like a breath of fresh air, a light that you'll just feel that's flooding into your day. And we're going to have some fun. We're going to have some fun today, Christy, right?
I hope so. I adored meeting you, and I love the way that you set me up. So I hope everyone is jazzed and excited as I was listening to your last podcast.
Oh my gosh, we're gonna have a great time. Christy, why don't you just introduce yourself from your perspective? I already introduced a little bit about you, but who are you and what are you working on in the world right now?
I'm working on world domination. I really, so who I am a talent operations executive with 20 years experience. I specialize in helping organizations think about their talent and how to centralize that function in a human-centric way in the age of technology. So I really, for me, it's important that we don't lose sight of the human, the spirit, and everything that evolves within them as we elevate our business practices.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, that's why we're so connected. We really put the human first. I mean, you know what we do, focusing on really prioritizing what does it mean to bring people together in a meaningful way. But we also talk a lot about leadership, and I know that's something that you're really passionate about as well. What is one step, or what is the first part if someone were to be listening to this as a CEO, maybe an HR professional or a people leader? What's that first step in becoming a better human leader, and how do you even define that for yourself?
So the and I'll tell you a story to back this up, but the best part of being a good human leader is to know thyself, right? So you have to hold space for yourself. And I was in an article a couple of months ago, but I said, if you have a flat tire on the way to work, maybe not the best time to have a conversation with your staff about how they're underperforming because you're already agitated. So
Mm.
it's really holding space for yourself and understanding kind of where your headspace is, your emotions, and allowing those emotions to pass through you, right? And feel them and let them pass through, because emotions are just temporary. And I think the biggest thing is, creating a place where you can hold space for yourself. And what does that look like for each person? It's different for everybody. Um, so I had a personal coach a couple of years ago. This is my holding space journey. And she told me, because I'm very busy all the time and probably have ADHD, but she told me, she's like, "Hey, I want you to go spend some time with yourself and, just really clear your mind." And I said, "Well, what does that look like?" And she said, "Well, I want you to go sit in a room and just, you know, hold space for yourself." And I said, "Well, do I need to sit in a particular way? Can I have the TV on? Can I be reading a book? Can I listen to a podcast? Can I have music on?" And she just over and over said, "No, I just want you just to sit down
Mm.
and do nothing. Like, that's it. I just want you to sit down and do nothing." That was the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life, because I've never been able to just sit still
Mm.
with myself. My accent's coming out.
Mm.
And so I did that, but what was great is that then I found peace in it. I was able to process my emotions. I was able to reflect on my day, things that could have helped me or things I could have done differently. And what it did is it just created this mindfulness in me of myself and how I was showing up. But then it allowed me to have space for other people to do the same.
That's so powerful. I mean, you heard it here first, folks. If you are the kind of person that's like, okay, I know I have nothing to do right now. Well, maybe you're not even thinking that because you probably have so many things to do.
Mm.
But to just be able to go, you know what? I'm not going to go clean right now. I'm not going to do this. Like, what do we turn to? And maybe that's a question for the listeners today. What do you turn to in the moments of where you could just be in stillness and where you could just be clearing your mind? I mean, this is something that is so powerful. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about mindfulness too, Christy. But when we talk to different teams, or we're talking to different CEOs and they're wanting their team to be innovative and they want them to think about a new project or product or something like that, what we do is take them away from those environments that they're currently in, boardrooms, and they're sitting there thinking. And we're like, let's get you into nature and
Mhm.
de-stress and be in that stillness because that's when those ideas come through. And going back to being a human leader, like how do you think that those mindful moments have showed up in your leadership style? Like implementing that mindfulness, implementing the stillness into your day, what have you been able to do, accomplish, and show up as with that as a part of your life?
I think that's such a great question, and it's going to be different depending on the day. So I think for me, what really happens, and I focus a lot on people and elevating them, and helping them grow and see their value within themselves, right? But the best part of getting still is that and feeling things that might be coming up for you is you can improve yourself, but if you're working on a project, when you release the things that aren't serving you, the things that are swirling around in your brain, you suddenly now have space for things that serve you. And so now that you've opened up that space, it's amazing how things just drop in your spirit or drop in your subconscious, and those ideas just start coming to light. And it's really allowing ourselves to take a beat, whether it's you work from home or you work in the office. COVID changed the way we work. It changed our lives forever. And I think a lot of people really got clear with themselves. I mean, I know there were some pandemic marriages and divorces and all kinds of things. I moved states, sold a house, got engaged, got unengaged, like all the things. But when you get still and you really reflect with yourself and you honor yourself to have that space away from technology, to have that space, put your phone down, put social down, really get out to nature is the best thing. I love it. It just ushers in the ideas and the energy, and you start to rebound. One of the things that I like to do, and I've done since I was a little girl, is I'll go stand out in grass barefoot. I didn't know that that was grounding. I didn't learn that until I was in my 40s. But all I know is that it really helped give me a piece of calm. And and then when I got older, I realized what that was. So that's one of the rituals that I do, or one of the things that I do. And for me, it's essential for me to take time for myself because I'm not an effective leader. If I haven't taken some time for myself, and I find this in a lot of successful leaders and business owners, is they get up earlier, they go to bed earlier, but in the morning it tends to be their sacred time. So that's the time that I get up and, I have a cup of coffee and I go sit outside and listen to nature and the birds. And then I go to the gym. It's my time. So I'm honoring my body, my spirit, my soul, all of that, making sure that I'm healthy so I can show up for other people and I can lead other people.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, when you think about the specifics of like day to day and having conversations with people, there's a difference. And I encourage everyone that's listening to think about that for themselves, you know, taking time in the morning and having that sacred time, whatever it may be. And I
Yeah.
always tell people it doesn't have to be this long, extensive morning routine where you're like, this is so unattainable. But what makes sense for you in your day? Whether that is just, I'm going to step outside and take my first sip of my coffee or tea and really just take it in. And that's it. Or maybe it's a whole thing, right? You've got the whole routine, you've got the walk, you've got the juicing, whatever you're doing. But notice how you feel. And I think, like you
Mhm.
said, Christy, we can just ask those reflective questions like, how am I feeling? And how am I, can I meet myself where I am today? Can I meet myself in this moment? And it's really powerful. Now, another thing that we're facing in today's workforce, and keeping all of this in mind as we take care of ourselves, as we're more mindful, is that there's a lot happening, right? In the next 5 years, 58% of the workforce will be Gen Z and millennials. We've got multi-generational workforce, which means that there's a lot of different kinds of people that we're operating with on a day-to-day. And how do you show up as that human first leader when everybody's got different communication styles? Like what do you see, Christy, and what has been the most effective, at least as you're going and being this human leader and taking all of these steps to take care of yourself?
So what, okay, I want to make sure I understood the question. So what is how do we help people in the busy world, and how do I take care of myself?
Yeah, how do you move forward? You're doing the things, you're taking care of yourself, you're being a human first
Mhm.
leader. And now we've got this added layer of a multi-generational workforce. There's so many different communication styles. How do you handle that? How do you navigate that? What's been showing up for you and what's been the most effective?
You know what's been showing it for me is so I'm a mom of a 28 and 30-year-old,
Hmm.
right? I'm a mentor coach to many nieces and nephews. I'm an auntie. I'm Native American, so auntie is kind of like the we're the leader
Hmm.
in in the family, or the uncle. And so what shows up for me is that the communication styles are different. And the one thing that I'm seeing is that and you said this at HR Retail, we're just talking past each other, right? And so what I see is
Hmm.
a lot of assumptions about the different generations. And I think there's a lot that comes down to that. It's, I left a note for my son, 28-year-old son. He was dog sitting for me. I wrote it in cursive.
Hmm.
Okay. He calls me and says, "Hey, I have no idea what you just left me." I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He goes, "Well, it's in cursive or something." And I said, "Well, yeah, I write in cursive." And he said, "Mom, they stopped teaching cursive in third grade. I never learned cursive." And
Hmm.
so I'm like, "Holy crap, I can't even communicate with my own son who's dog sitting for me." Right. And so now I have to mindfully, when he dog sits, I text it or I will write it down and,
Hmm.
hey, the dog's on this medicine or whatever it might be. So I think a lot of what I'm seeing is we need to be really mindful of the honeycomb of diversity we're in, because it's so much more than our age. It's our age, it's our race, it's our financial background, it's our sexual preferences, it's everyone's um, presumptions of that, right? And so what I'm seeing is there's a lot of, people that are just being judgy, and they're not taking a step back, and they're not listening. And so when you're really mindful and in the moment and you're hearing somebody, you're listening actively, not to what they said, but what they actually said. For my son, I thought, well, holy crap, how did I, as his mother for 28 years, not know that he can't correspond in this way? And so
Hmm.
I think it's a lot of taking a step back and hearing the person and understanding. The other thing too is, what is everyone's tech origination story, right? So we are in a high age of artificial intelligence and technology. It's very scary. And then you take, what is their origination story? So for instance, with me, um, I grew up with phones attached to the wall, right? And if you dialed outside of your town, it was long distance. And so then suddenly we were cool because we had big phones you could walk around the house in. And then you had flip phones, and it progressed. And now they're computer phones. So if you think about that for me, and I'm midway through my life, then think about, the older generation who are trying to learn how to use their phone and the technology and all the things. Gen Z
Hmm.
were, born with computers in their hands, and they can find anything like that. I always teased my kids and said, well, if I had Google when I was in school, I would have got straight A's. So there's just these assumptions of the different things, but it's understanding the experiences that they've lived through. And I think what's important is to stay curious on both sides, and to have a conversation on both sides. And it's amazing what you'll learn. I mean,
Hmm.
I've learned so much from you. I'm honored to know you and your grit and how you approach things. It blows my mind sometimes. And so I think what I'm seeing is that there's a lot of assuming, which makes an ass out of you and me, right?
Hmm.
I think you need people that are going to hold space for you in those rooms and speak up for you, and your generations in those rooms, to say, I don't think you're hearing this the right way. And I know at HR Retail, you did a poll and you asked everybody to shout out what their assumption was of the Gen Z population. And some of the things we heard was, the number one thing I always hear is,
They're lazy.
they're lazy.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so, and I was in a conversation with somebody, a business owner the other day, and they blurted that out. And I said, no, I said, I think you're thinking about that not in the right way. And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, I think that because we communicate differently, we perceive that they're lazy. I said, but actually they can teach us something, because what they're asking for is they're asking to be seen and heard and to be considered. They don't want to work 60 hours a week. They don't want to do this. Like, they have lives, they're growing, they're learning. And so when we had that conversation, they said, you know what, maybe I am looking at it the wrong way. So I think it's about just being more open and championing other people, helping people kindly find a different path forward in the way they're thinking.
Yeah, it's something that can be applied to so many different situations. And it's
Mm.
just this idea of meeting somebody where they are, and just, and like you said, this example with your son, he called you, he didn't understand, and it was that moment of, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize, because, this is what I learned my entire life. And if you can go back and ask that question of like anybody's origin story, whether that's technology, whether that's how they grew up, their background, and just, and I think it comes down to empathy, right? It
Oh,
comes back to that
100%.
emotion of like, how do you put yourself in someone else's shoes and really see where they're coming from, to have all of these different messages pull through, and then for us to go, let's come up with a solution together, rather than us going back and forth and doing all these things. And it's true. It's a lot of what I've talked about. I've studied so much of Gen Z, and you see all the values are a lot, very similar in a lot of ways, right? We want respect, we want honesty, we want flexibility, X, Y, Z. But are we communicating the same? And what can those conversations look like to get on the same page? So I love that example. And for those of you that are listening, like, think about that. Remember Christy's example here, where we talked about the cursive, right? Can you remember, what was your experience? But then actually ask them, well, what was your experience? And did you experience the same thing? Was it different? And can we just be a little bit more reflective about those different situations? Christy, you're doing really incredible work, day to day. And I think, we should talk about the technology aspect of what you're doing, because you were spot on when you were like, listen, people for our technology at Appy here, they're not going to necessarily want to apply the same way, because this is their tech origin story. Gen Z and this future of work and how things will start to shift. Can you talk just a little bit about that for a second?
Yeah, no, I'd love to. So Appy here is we are a we are a digital hourly platform. So what that means is we create a centralized place for applicants, almost like an applicant tracking system. It's an hyper automated place where individuals can come. So it's really great for the users, both sides, the clients and the hourly population. But if you think about, so if we think about the different generations and we think about the different types of workers, you've got salary and hourly. The day of the resume is going away. Like, even for the salary roles, the recruiters are having to deal with AI. All the resumes are perfect. Everyone's suddenly qualified and beyond. Um, what our app focuses on is really that Gen Z worker, that big percent of them that want the hourly work. And it doesn't require a resume. It's app based. A lot of Gen Z, from what we've found, don't trust getting text, because there's a lot of fraud going on. They don't trust emails, opening emails that they don't know. So we are app based. And what we're finding is that's a more trusted resource, because we can validate the employers that are hiring are actually employers that are hiring. It's not a third party agency or a repost from 3 years ago. They're getting instant communication. They know if they're in, if they're out, if they're passing qualifications, they're being prompted immediately within the same time to set up a self schedule interview that's flexible for their time, that works for them. And so what that's doing is it's driving down the time that's needed to find a job and get a job.
Mhm.
It's also giving them a day in the life and just the different things that they need to make that decision. But we're meeting them where they're at. It's on their phone. They can engage when they want to. It's a trusted place. And then for the older population, they're able to, from a tech perspective, it is a little different, the apps and things like that. But it's no different than if you think about, if you've used Uber, right? I'll never take a taxi again. I use Uber. It's no different than ordering DoorDash for your food. It's the same thing. It's just helping candidates expedite their job search, but better meeting their parameters. So they put in what works for them, and they're only matched to what works for them, their schedule, their pay, all the things that they're looking for. And so that's why it's so great because they are getting that communication. 50% of applicants today never hear back, ever.
Mhm.
And so, can you imagine just go into your phone, you go into your app, here's where you've applied, all your prompts are there, you're getting communication, and you can message the employer. So
Mhm.
that's the difference is we're really helping usher in that humanity piece within the age of technology and automation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I heard this, I was like, definitely. I would 1000% use an app. I'm not going to respond to a random text message with a link, let alone click on a link. I don't even know where it's coming from. So, it's really true. And I think it's where we're aligned in a lot of ways because it does give these companies a competitive edge. And that's just another solution. Like we talk a lot about how will you not look around someday and go, where are all my employees? And we're going after that solution with an offsite and having people have an experience that's in nature and they feel connected. But it doesn't just start with the offsite, right? It starts with the onboarding process. How are these
No,
people treated from the beginning and XYZ in all these different ways to get to that offsite, to get to these different things? And it's really important that they're responded to, they feel like they're taken care of, they don't feel like it's a scam, all these different things. It's a employee experience journey. And that starts from A, not just, B, C, D. We don't just jump to all those different places. And so I think it's really important. And I love that we're connected on that. So now that we're talking about it, the different ways to have a competitive edge for these organizations, what are some other ways that you think that they can retain and attract, top talent and really bring in the best people?
It's interesting because part of our offering is we monitor recruitment marketing and programmatic, right? So we know what's vetting the result down to where it was posted, the A/B testing of what was posted from what they were wearing to what they said. So what we're finding through our research is that the Gen Z, and I think we heard this at the conference too, they'll go look at TikTok not from a corporate standpoint, but from, hey, I'm an employee and I work at this big box retailer and here's my day.
Mhm.
They're going to actually, and we've done polls, the candidates are actually looking at that first because more now than maybe back in my day. I think when I was starting out, it was you'd walk in and yeah, I like Brahms and I like ice cream and yeah, here's my
Mhm.
application, right? My mom actually filled out my first application and got me a job and came home and said, "Hey, you start at Brahms on Friday." I was like, "What? I don't know. I don't need a job." So today it's a little different, right? Obviously, but I think it's understanding where is that audience you're looking for? What is the persona, number one? Where is that audience and what's resonating with them? And then obviously, I think we need to be putting our best foot forward, transparency, and really helping them understand what they get into because you want to make sure that they stick. So attracting them it's a little bit of science, but sticking that's where the art and the science come together. And that's if you can give them that good experience and then when they're onboarded, what you're talking about is how do we bring them together and keep them engaged in the world that we're living in today. So it's not just one vendor that's going to like solve the world's problems, but if you take in consideration their journey and getting them excited and then having them have a good experience and then what you your money where your mouth is, what we said is what it is, that's where you're going to see retention. We have seen a 40% uptick in retention of 90-day hires.
Mhm.
And that comes down to the fact that our application actually checks the person before they get offered. There's a thing in our app that tells them, hey, before you can accept this offer, we need you to map it to make sure the driving time for you is going to work. Because in these larger cities or these rural areas, it could be a deal breaker on their first or second day when they realize, oh, I really can't do that commute. So we have a couple of things in there where we check in with the candidates before an offer is extended, and it's all automated for our clients. But what we're seeing is by getting the right person at the right time and then making sure they're validating things, that retention's going up. So it's a lot like Instagram. I can tell if someone's been on and they're active. Our app does the same thing. So you're not paying for stale candidates 2 and 3 times over. You're actually getting live candidates. That's
Yeah.
why I think it's so great. And then for the candidates too, because they're actually being seen, they're being responded to, and they know what's going on.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that we all have to think a little differently in today's day and age and say, what can we do to keep growing people and to keep having them stay more connected to, the mission, the values, the company. How do we keep moving people along in that way? And you're right, it's not just one partner that you're going to partner with that's going to solve every single thing. It's thinking that way initially, that humans first approach, back to what we were talking about in the beginning. And then how can I incorporate different aspects of the employee experience to make sure that this all comes to life and keeps people for as long as they'd like to stay, and really gives them that unique experience. And I think that as I study more and more Gen Z, things will continue to shift, will continue to change. I think that they'll go after the companies that are really prioritizing this and giving them the best experience. So that's why we're in business, right, Christy?
Well, that we're trying to change the world one human at a time, but
Yes,
yes.
absolutely. We're keeping it all going, and I think you attract more and more people that are on that page too and go, I want to work with real people and I want to bring this together. And let's transition a little bit here. I think you're an amazing writer. You wrote an amazing article, Lead with Heart. Can you talk a little bit about the Grandpa Langley method? Tell me about that. Like our listeners need to know.
Right. So it's funny that, and thank you for that, because that article's been reshared so many times and republished actually, which I was shocked. Right. So the article talks about the Grandpa Langley method. So Grandpa Langley is my grandfather. He is gone. A beautiful, beautiful man, big blue eyes, worked for AT&T until the day he died. Was a World War II vet and a prisoner of war, and some amazing stories and life lessons that I learned from him. But the one thing that he taught me when I was coming up, and he used to call me sis. He said, "Sis, the best way to grow." And he was a cop, he was a pastor, he was a leader in the community, just an amazing person. He said the best way for us to grow in it as a community and to elevate is to always be in the middle. And, I said, "Well, what does that mean, Pops?" And he said, "Well, to always be in the middle, you should always be reaching down to pull somebody up. If you
Mm,
see value in them, if you see something that they bring to the world, a light in them that maybe they don't recognize, it is your job and responsibility to reach down, show them, share, give a word of encouragement, and pull them up." He said, "Now, on the other side of it, you need to always be reaching up. So as you're always reaching down, you should always be reaching up to learn from someone above you, and hopefully they're helping elevate you and helping you see the special things in you and how you contribute to the world." And so that's the Grandpa Langley method. So it's always been in my heart, and I've always done that, and it's served me well. And I love when other people get to experience that, and it uplifts and encourages them as well, because we do encourage each other, and you never know what's going on with somebody or what they're going through. And just that moment of human connectivity and recognition of another person and their strengths and what they bring to the world is so valuable, because those are the things. I heard a quote about, you should never keep a compliment to yourself. And I know people are nervous to do that these days. But if you see something really, really unique about somebody that is changing it, speak up about it, because when you elevate it, it elevates, and then we have more good, right? And so that's the Grandpa Langley method.
I can truly say that you are a living example of the Grandpa Langley method because, that's how we met. Like
Mhm.
you had seen me on a webinar and then you reached out to me and you're like, I love what I see in you. I love your energy. And even something like that, it's like you're always reaching out, putting a hand out somewhere, planting a seed in somebody else so that it grows within them and they can help, the next five people that they impact, whatever it may be. It's really, really powerful. So I hope for our listeners that are, tuning in today that you can take that and maybe teach it as a lesson to your team, to the people around you, because we can instill these behaviors, these patterns, these really positive ways of thinking and being in the world together and being in community and just grow by numbers each day, every single day. And it's really powerful. So, Christy, thank you so much for sharing that and just shining your light with us. Like, so powerful, the work that you've done and just how you're so passionate about changing this world together and bringing people alongside with you. I'm going to ask you one more question before we wrap up here today. What does being a human leader mean to you?
A human leader mean to me? Servant leadership, truly servant leadership. So a leader, a leader's job is actually to be the employee's employee, right? So it is our job to advocate for our employees, to listen, see them, and understand where their pain points are, understand what their desires are and where they want to go, because their desires are not always where they are in that moment. It could be way down the line. And why I think that's so important is that you're entrusted with that individual, and it is your responsibility as a leader to ensure that they grow and thrive and have psychological safety. I really I take that seriously. If you don't have those qualities, you shouldn't be in that seat. That's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah, I love that so much. Well, Christy, thank you so much for being here today, for sharing your wisdom, for sharing your grandpa Langley with us, and just all of the stories that I think will stick out to people and they'll be able to carry with them to start meeting people where they are and continue that positive community building empathy part of us that we all have that we just need to dig into a little bit deeper sometimes. Are there any, places that people can connect with you, Christy? I know I'm going to link all of your articles, your LinkedIn below, but is there anything else that you want people to know about and how they can connect with you?
Uh, I am an open networker. I absolutely love helping people. Hopefully that came across. LinkedIn is great. That's my professional playground. But I'm also on Instagram and Facebook, Christy Honeycutt. So just come find me and through the links that you're sharing. Thank you so much for your time and your light. And I told you when I met you, you're going to do great things, and I'm watching it uncover every day. So let's go change the world, girl.
I love it. Let's do it, Christy. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next episode, everyone.